Welcome to the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast, a peek behind the curtain of some of the most intimate conversations that people have with Ezra as an intimacy coach. Join us for a session already in progress.
Briana, welcome to the Ask Ezra Podcast.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Busy day, but I'm really excited to do this podcast with you.
So we're going to ask you about the stuff that you do for work, and then we're going to get into some juicy intimacy coaching conversations. So I'm excited about that.
Right, me too.
So, Briana, tell me, what kind of coaching do you do?
I do life coaching. I'm specifically an empowerment coach, and my niche, who I tend to work with the most, are neurodivergents or caregivers of neurodivergence, but I will and can work with anybody. I've worked with neurotypical business owners. I've worked with single mothers that are neurotypical. I've worked with people in health and wellness. I used to be a wellness coach before I got into life coaching, and I've done spiritual coaching as well, but that is my primary right now is neurodivergence.
Awesome. I got a sweet spot. I've got a soft spot because I am neurospicy myself.
Neurospicy, I like that. I'm going to take that.
Yeah. Another fun word that people have been using is ADHD, right? Because I think a lot of us got diagnosed as attention deficit disorder. And then as we get older, we're like, this looks a lot like autism.
Was it last year? They actually redefined ADD and ADHD as being grouped in the spectrum.
Oh, yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, that makes so much sense. Because when I used to explain to people what my ADD was like, I would use autistic individuals as the baseline for people to understand so they're familiar. And then I would explain how it's similar, but this is how it works for me.
That makes a lot of sense. I know I like personally, I get really overstimulated and I have a hard time with like social cues. And I think what's really frustrating for me personally is I can't tell if I'm missing a social cue or you're just an asshole.
Yeah, totally. I can relate to that.
Correct me if I need to be corrected, right? But if you just want to be mad because I needed correction, like you're just a piece of shit and I don't care.
This is a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah, we're adults, right? Your feelings
Mostly.
are your responsibility, or did the rules change?
Not everybody's hip on that, unfortunately. A lot of people have missed that.
Yeah, that is funny. No, and I think it was really tough for me too because I'm super social, hyper social. I'm a total extrovert. I grew up in a very social context and I was always really good at talking with adults. And so I was like, oh, I couldn't be autistic. I'm too good at talking. But then I'm like, wait a minute. I'm pretending to be human, aren't I? Yes.
Yeah, that masking. I was actually just talking to a really good friend of mine today. Our joke is that he's the masculine form of me and I'm the feminine form of him because we mirror each other nonstop. Love getting on the phone with each other because we can just ADD all over the place and keep up with each other. Like we're all over, coming back, circling. I'll be back to that in a minute. Just leave it without saying it. We just do it. And we were talking about this exact thing, the masking, the pretending to be normal, whatever that is. I don't think anybody's normal. We just all present in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Or hide our abnormalities differently. But we were talking about that ability to be able to blend in because especially in our generation, when we were younger, there wasn't much knowledge. It was just, oh, you need to be medicated so that you can be normal. And then people can't see my quotation fingers, but I'm using lots of quotations around normal. And we learned that adaptation of, okay, let me put on this mask to make you feel comfortable, which is not a super healthy thing to do, right? But learning how to adapt and adjust in a world that just doesn't quite understand and be able to go, okay, this is me. You can take it or leave it. You don't have to interact with me if you don't like this. I will also do my best to be aware of you and how I impact you, but the mask goes away. That's a part of why I became an empowerment coach, because going through that my entire life of having to wear a stinking mask is exhausting. And is it an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert? I can't remember which one, but I can be at home all day long by myself, perfectly fine with it. Sometimes I don't want to deal with people, but you get me out in a social situation, especially when I'm primed for it and ready, all day long, I will be the life of the party. But then I need to go home and I need to decompress from that.
Yeah, so that would make you an extroverted introvert.
extroverted
So
introvert.
yeah, so you're good at being an extrovert, but it costs you to be out in the world. Whereas I am an introverted extrovert. So I feed off of other people. Like you put me in a party, I could be exhausted. You put me into a party, and all of a sudden I have all this energy because I'm like feeding off of
Yeah.
my environment, right? But
Yeah.
my life is fairly secluded. My life, I spend almost all my time at home in my office, and sometimes I get to reach out to people through Zoom. But my life is I read, I write. I'm like a hermit, but I would really rather be in the marketplace. I would really rather be out in the bazaar, being bizarre, as it were.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Okay. Thank you for untangling that there.
Well,
And
okay, I've got a question for you because you were talking about taking off the mask, right?
yes.
And that I have a hard time understanding because to me, it's not taking off the mask, it's finding a less exhausting mask or finding a different mask that's more appropriate for the situation. I don't like, so what would you say is taking the mask off? What is that like?
For me, I like the analogy hats instead of masks. Instead of covering up my real face, who I am, what I am, I'll put on a different hat. If I'm going into church, the side of me that's into all the Halloweeny things and my spirituality is, I'm not a Christian. I don't identify as that. I'm an omniist. I accept and embrace all religions and see the validity in them. I'll put on a different hat because if I am in my full force doing energy work on people and mentioning my card readings, a lot of folks are going to get really uncomfortable with that. So I'll put on my church hat for a little while and I'll filter a little bit of what I say, but in certain groups of people with certain folks, like in the Bible study group, I'm 100%, I take all the hats off. There's no need to have them on there. We all accept each other as is, but when we're out in the broader church environment, okay, I'll put a church hat on for a little while and that's okay. Or my business hat, right? So with my business, because I do a lot of the things that are part of my personal life, I don't have to edit quite as much, but there's that professionalism aspect. There does need to be a degree of that. So I've got my business hat on. When I got my chef hat, I'm just a sailor. I'm going to say and do whatever, unless I'm doing a private catering gig for somebody. But in the kitchen, it's, no holds bar. You do and say whatever, just don't cross too many lines and get your job done. So I look at it more as the analogy of wearing different hats. You're just dressing yourself up in a different way, but you are still authentically yourself. But in different situations, it may just either not be appropriate to bring full force, or it may cost more time and energy than you're really willing to put in, because energy is currency.
Yeah.
We pay energy when we go out and do things. So if I'm interacting with this person and I know they have trouble with the woo-woo side of things, is it really worth the amount of energy that I know is going to go into that conversation when I bring it up and they inevitably have trouble with it, or their energy changes and I can feel it? Like, not really. I don't feel like dealing with that today. But sometimes I don't care and I just don't wear any hats, and I feel like I can field the energy and handle it, because I'm a Reiki practitioner as well. Some of the work that I do involves dealing with energy centers and chakras. If I'm in a good space, energetically, mentally, physically, I'm feeling good, that's all the hats are off. I don't care. I know that I can adjust the energy flow as needed, or I can put a protective barrier around myself, and just people can feel and think and say whatever the heck they want. I'm still going to be regardless of what they think, because it's my life. I'm living it every day. I'm in my body. Think and feel and say away. I'm still going to be happy with me at the end of the day.
That's lovely. Yeah. And you mentioned life coaching around neurodivergence. And so what are the challenges people typically come to you with?
Oh, lots of different things. So let me think of a few specific clients. So I have one who's a stay-at-home mom with a husband who's on the road a lot and is bipolar and ADHD. And she recently found out about the ADHD and has been dealing with the bipolar for her whole life. And then struggles from depression as well, or overcomes depression, is what I like to say. She's still in struggle mindset and learning to be in empowered mindset, which is, I'm overcoming this. So something that she's come to me with is being a stay-at-home mom, not having a partner around, because those of us who are on the spectrum, sometimes having a body double around, right? Like just having someone around can help us be more productive. It's just the way our brains work. So when she's alone a lot at home, like she'll either get in her head and suddenly she's lost for an hour, just up here, just all in the head, and forgets to come back. And then, oh crap, an hour's passed. I got to go pick up the kids in 2 hours. And then that activates anxiety. And then there's spinning wheels and not getting anything done. And then the ADHD comes in and she's distracted. And she's just, I feel like I'm all over the place. I can't even get my house clean. Like it's too much. And I'm managing these kids by myself and I'm overwhelmed. So what I do is I do a lot of SMART goal setting. So first we identify whatever the barriers and obstacles are. And that's not direct. What I do is I just have a conversation of just curiosity. How are you doing today? And usually whatever is bothering folks, it'll come up and we'll find our way to the bottom. I do have a way of taking 1,000 different things people have told me and consolidating it down into, hey, this is what I'm hearing. Is this the struggle that you're having, or is this the barrier? And 99% of the time I'm on point. So that's how our conversations flowed. But I worked with her because she said, I can't keep up with this. I'm having so much trouble. Yeah, I need help. And so it came to SMART goal setting. I was like, okay, what are the things that are bothering you the most? What's your top priority? Okay. What do you need personally? And so we have all these different factors of her personal needs, the children in the mix. What are the obstacles? What are priority? What's top priority? What's bottom tier? Work our way through that. And then we set SMART goals based off of it. As okay, this is the top rung. This is exactly what you need. How can we get to that? And then we set small steps. I look at it like a ladder. So top rung is the goal. That's where you want to be. And then in a ladder, you have to add each step to get there. So we're going to go through step by step and build good habits and patterns until we get to that ultimate goal. And for me, my guarantee is that in 3 to 6 sessions, I'm going to be able to either get you to your top tier goal or get you on a sustainable path to reaching that goal.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So your ladder has 3 to 6 rungs.
Essentially, for me, taking some pretty big steps. And I think that's because of the way that I coach. I'm very free flowing. And I'll adjust to whatever clients need. If someone needs gentle, I'll be gentle all day long. But I am also, we're going to go directly to the root of the problem, right? Because if you prune a weed, it's still got the root system. It's going to keep growing, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that I deal with in my own healing journey. Is I've been pruning certain weeds, and once I become aware of it, okay, let's rip this thing up. Because once you go to the root of the problem, you're not going to be dealing with it anymore. Or if you are dealing with it, you now know the steps that you need to get there. So now you have a toolbox that's full of the right gardening tools to get that weed up and out of your garden. So you're not dealing with it over and over again, growing and getting bigger and healthier because you're pruning it and helping it out on accident.
Yeah. And I think you're right on track with, if you're consistently dealing with a problem over and over again, and you have the same strategy, clearly that strategy isn't taking care of the problem, right? Maybe it's managing the problem, but it isn't eliminating the problem. And I think it's interesting too, because inherent in getting to the root of the problem is experiencing it again, right? And so it's so easy to say, wow, I keep coming back to it, and so I must be failing if I keep feeling it. But really, if you've got this new awareness of it, then now you can address it in a different way. And it needs to come up. Like, you can't deal with an anger problem by avoiding things that make you angry. You're never dealing with it.
Yeah.
So at some point you've got to say, okay, here's my new strategy.
In all of my practice coaching time, I've seen consistently that I am able to do that. Because if I look back, is usually 3 or 4 sessions is about all that's needed. And there was one client where it took 6 because there was a lot of resistance from him. He was going his own way. And once we broke that barrier, that was it. 2 more sessions. I was at 4 and I was like, ooh, we're at 4 sessions. Like, we're getting close to what my view of myself and my abilities as a coach is. And then he broke the barrier, and it was a reminder of, oh yeah, this is a co-facilitated thing. So like, I can facilitate all day long, but if my client isn't doing the work that's needed to be done, or if they're not in a mindset where they're ready to actually make that change, they're not growth mindset, I can coach them until the ends of time. Until they're there, they're not going to get there. But every session, that was what I noticed. The pattern was between 3 and 6, we got there. And if they don't get there in that time, they may need to take some time and space to get themselves into a more coachable mind frame, because not everybody's coachable.
Yep. And I think that's, now that you say it, that's really consistent with what I've been finding. I spent about 1.5 years so far doing this radical sexual acceptance research project. And I limit myself to 4 sessions because I can't coach people forever, right?
Yeah.
I'm in this research project, you're getting no cost coaching. And so I need to say, what is the least amount of time that I can consistently make a difference or facilitate your making a difference?
Yeah.
And there's 6 vectors of measurement. So things like the satisfaction with life scale, adult happiness scale, personal growth initiative scale. And in 4 sessions, I'm seeing a lot of change, a lot of movement on those graphs. So that's really exciting. And like I said, it's consistent. That's 4 sessions. So
Awesome. Where can people find that? Because are you still accepting clients for it?
I
Or
am, yeah. So I call them participants because they're not paying, right?
that makes sense. That's a good
Yeah.
differentiator.
And it's interesting too, because although the power dynamic feels very similar, we are mutually helping each other, right? So they are participating in this research and I'm benefiting from their insight. And
Yeah.
so the power dynamics a little bit different because I'm being informed by them in a way
Yeah.
that's really significant. People can still get involved. I think honestly that I'll be doing this research for the next 10 years.
Okay.
I
Wow.
it's hard to say, but
Awesome though.
doing it feels like a snail's pace sometimes because it's not like a bing bang boom, fill out the survey, take a
Yeah.
pill and tell me how it feels. We have to actually do some changing and some growing. If at the time you are listening or watching, this is still up and running, then the way to find out about it is tinyurl.com/startrsa. And that's the Radical Sexual Acceptance Research Project. Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah, please. I do need participants. I think that the challenge is that I've got a lot of qualitative data. I've got a lot of data where I'm like, look at this person and how much of a difference it's made for this person. But I think what's challenging is getting quantitative data. And that really requires like 70 some participants. And if everybody's doing 6 weeks of coaching, that's a lot of time.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's why I say 10 years, but I'm not going to wait to get 75 participants to write the book. So I'll write it before then.
No, perfect. Really, how many participants can you take on in a year?
So if I was to max out, we're looking at 60. But I think that would be comfortable, but that would be like everything is working exactly perfectly, right? Because that means that's a month at a time, 5 participants per month. I think I could get 60 done, but I'm just not that organized. I'm not that focused because there's other stuff happening, right? I wish I could do this full time and then I definitely could get the 60 if it's like the only thing I was doing in my life. Then sure, yeah, life is complicated. And unfortunately, I was not, born into wealth. So I can't just do that.
Yeah, even if you looked at it, say cut it in half, because if your self-limiting belief is that you're not that well organized, but maybe your organization looks different, because as an ADD person myself, most people look at my organization, they're like, what just exploded? No, that's what my brain looks like, and this is the organized version of it. It's okay if you don't get it. It's not for you. Don't worry about it. Like when I made notes for someone else, I take this giant paper and then I consolidate it so that their brains can transmute it into a way that makes sense. So just wanted to give you that piece. But even if you were to only take on 30 clients in a year, you're looking at 3 years, that's 90. So you're well over your mark, and then time to write the book, 2-3 years if you want to slow move through it, because I'm a writer myself. I get that. You could easily do this in under 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I don't mean to give the impression that I'm going to wait 10 years to get this out into the world, because it's obviously making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to share that. And I'm going to go ahead with qualitative data. So I'm probably, it's September. I'm probably going to be looking at this time next year, having the book done and ready to publish.
Wow. You just added a zero then.
I'm sorry?
You just added a zero then. You're like, I'm going to be done with this in a year. I'm just going to add a zero though, just in case I don't feel like it.
Yeah, no, I think when do I share my findings and when am I complete with collecting data are 2 different questions.
That makes sense. But there's a lot of people that do studies like this, and they'll do exactly what you're doing. If I want to get this information out there because there's helpful information, and then they'll add an amended version, right? I'm just like, okay, I have this book, but here's the amended version because of the new data that I have coming out. I feel like it's never too early if it's going to help people. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be perfect. So that's awesome that you're like moving forward. Just, I'm still going to do this.
Yeah. And as far as I know, my research has not come up with any pre-existing coaching methodologies that specifically address queerness, right? There's no like, how do you coach a gender transition? How do you coach sexual discovery?
Just so neat. I'm getting
Yeah.
chills even listening to you talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you got your coach hat on, I can tell. And
I do. Sorry about that.
yeah, you're fine. But I'm supposed to be coaching you. Maybe we should have you on for another episode and
We
you can
should.
coach me. Yeah,
Sorry
absolutely.
about that. Before we transition, though, can you give
Yeah.
me the tiny URL one more time so I can write it down?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's tinyurl.com/startrsa.
Start RSA radical sex. What?
It's called Radical Sexual Acceptance. Yeah.
Radical. Okay.
And what's lovely is even if you don't qualify for the study, or even if you feel like it's not right for you, even just for signing up to check it out, you get the book. You get the free ebook, which is already written.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that the ebook, it's short, it's 8 pages or something, but it's, you get a sense of what are these 7 steps that always came up when I was coaching people who were in this gender or sexual acceptance journey.
A little teaser for what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you go to that link, you get like a full disclosure about everything that happens in the study. And then the first thing that you get is this compatibility quiz to see, is this right for you? Do you qualify for this study? Because not everybody qualifies. I think most people will, but it's not a value judgment. It's just who I think is going to be a good fit. Yeah. And that link sends you to this master document of all the different forms you have to fill out to participate. So it's all right there.
And for somebody who just said they weren't very well organized, that sounds extremely well organized. I'm just saying.
It's true. It's true. Amazing. Yeah. And to your credit, that's not the kindest way I could describe it.
I'm big on that. Yeah. My friends will tell you that when it's not just an empowerment coach thing, that's my personality. The way we speak to ourselves and about ourselves is so important. I have friends that will stop in the middle of a sentence and be like, I already know you're going to call me out on that, so let me just go ahead and change it. Dang, I do it that much? For real?
Yeah, you do, I'm sure. Yeah. And yeah, so let me say it differently. Let me say I often have to put a lot of effort into staying organized.
Accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally a neurodivergence thing too.
All right, Briana. Yeah. Time to transition to the meaty stuff, to the sexy stuff.
The sexy stuff. The sexy, meaty stuff. Let's go.
Yeah. So tell me, how is your relationship with yourself? How are your intimate relationships? Would you say they're exactly as you'd like them to be, or is there room for growth?
First of all, there's always room for growth. I'm totally one of those people. I'm the growth mindset. But for me, I feel like there's a massive amount of growth needed. And I'm dealing with childhood sexual trauma and just childhood abuse in general. So that's massively affected my relationships. And in coming out of my marriage, which was more healthy than a lot of other relationships I've been in, but I finally realized I am still accepting dysfunctional relationships in my life. Mm-hmm. And because of the sexual abuse I experienced as a child, that massively impacted my sexuality as a whole. So I'm really just now in a space where I'm very freely expressing myself from a sexual perspective and embracing my sexuality, because that was shameful before, or it was dangerous. So my survival centers go off. If I go into a sexuality mode at all, it's, oh crap, I need to not do this because it could be dangerous, which is not the truth anymore. But my mind knows, my heart and my body haven't caught up yet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned like a shame experience, and
yeah,
sort of, it sounded like you were saying that happened in the past. Does it continue to happen?
Not as much as it used to, because I actively worked on it in my marriage. And I'm not going to say much about my ex-husband just because I want him to have his privacy and private space there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the work that I did there was some good and some not so good in it. And some of it was just both of us navigating sexuality as well. Because this is a little bit I'll share about him. He's a preacher's son. So as anybody who is a preacher's child knows, there's a lot that comes with that. And as you get older, you unlearn a lot of things and learn a lot of new things. So we were on a journey together of just embracing different things. And then more recently, being a single person, I realized I haven't ever really done the single thing. I've always been in long-term relationships. Even when I was younger, anything under 6 months was very unusual for me. And it was usually longer. So just dating and really exploring what do I like and what don't I like, that wasn't something I did. So now I'm much more free and open. I'm not in a relationship. So there's not extra shame attached to, oh, I look sexy or I feel sexy and somebody else might notice and I'm in a relationship and that could be an issue because there's jealousy over here and just all the unnecessary complications I was allowing in my life. It's not a factor. So it's allowed me to take that shame piece and put it on the shelf a little bit more of I am allowed to be in this space. And even in a relationship, I want to be, or I am going to be, I strive to be in a relationship with someone who is accepting of that, who can appreciate and embrace it. We have enough trust and communication that if there is an issue, if I do something that makes them uncomfortable, we can navigate that together with love and compassion and talk to each other and figure out what do we need to do, if anything. Maybe we just need to acknowledge I felt a certain kind of way when you did or said this, and me to say, okay, that's all right that you feel that way. Also, this is a part of my sexual identity and this is something I'm going to do. So how are we going to navigate that? So it's a new way of thinking. I've been turning lots of volume knobs down and other ones up that haven't really had a chance to be present.
I love that analogy of turning volume knobs. And I love that you're getting a chance to really enjoy being single and have this more simple discovery experience. Right.
Yeah. And disclaimer, I've been doing the single thing, but I'm actually in an exclusive dating situation now where we're exploring it on an exclusive level. So I'm like back in that zone where I'm not openly dating because I wasn't just committing to one person immediately. I recognized that was an issue that I had that I didn't need to be doing. Like, figure things out first before you say, all right, let's go. So I'm now back in that space of, okay, I'm looking at a committed relationship. I've had all this freedom. Is that going to be roped off, or are there going to be issues? And all my fears and insecurities are coming up, and a lot of the past trauma and baggage is coming up. And we've had a few conversations. He's very different personality type because, like me, I am 100% masculine and feminine, go hand in hand. We all have those parts of ourselves, whichever one is more dominant, depends on the person. And he's a little bit more masculine and very direct and is a neurotypical and just has a very different way of viewing things, which is hilarious because I'm the opposite. I'm up and down and I'm loud and in your face, but usually not in a bad way. And I'm heart forward. I'm going to share openly. I'm an open book. So it's been an interesting experience navigating with someone who is so different from me and having to explain certain aspects of trauma and emotional intelligence, and to watch someone conceptualize that and understand it and come at it with compassion of just like, okay, I learned something new. Thank you for sharing that with me. That helps me understand what you're going through. But also for me, sharing my trauma is terrifying. I know I need to release that. It's stuck right here. All of those emotions and that experience, it wants to come out and be in the surface, and I'll speak about it. I'll intellectualize it. I had another coach that I was on a podcast with do a mini coaching session that pointed that out, that you're up here, you're explaining it. You need to be in your feelings about this.
Yeah.
As a child, when I was abused, being in my feelings is usually when that happens.
It's dangerous. Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say that I appreciate your compassion with this experience of masculinity, and because it can feel like a really rigid box, right? People who are assigned male at birth and identify as male or as a man are often given these messages that expressing anything outside of this box is really dangerous and is shameful and is belittling or degrading to do anything outside of this box of masculinity. And so I know that can be especially challenging for people who don't feel like they're trapped in a box to have the empathy. And so I applaud you for having that empathy. But I'm going to ask a question I think is potentially challenging, and it's, how does that shame that's left over, how does that show up in your body?
Fear. And my belief is that fear and anger are like our shields. So they're very accessible. So usually there's something hiding underneath that. So I'm going to start there because that's where I can identify as the fear hits first. And then it's almost like somewhere between feeling nauseous and getting gut punched. Or I guess from what men have described to me is what happens when they get kicked in the balls. Very similar feeling from what I've heard of just it's deep down in my between my solar plexus and my sacral, which is chakra related for me, but that's the area that I feel it of just like being sick and in pain. And then there's a lot of sadness attached to it. I can feel it in my throat and my heart. It feels restrictive. If you've ever had a panic attack, feels similar to that, just like massive anxiety rising, or if you're in a really humid, muggy place and like you're just having trouble breathing and getting your sick,
Yeah.
it's that thing. It's like it's all caught right here.
Yeah.
And then pressure in my head, in my ears.
And what response does that historically or lately create? What kind of response do you have to that experience?
Those are two different answers. So historically, because of the types of partners that I chose that weren't right for me, it brought out frustration, anger, withdrawal. And the withdrawal is still there. I actually had the friend of mine that I mentioned earlier, I don't remember if we were recording or not, where he's the masculine version of me, right? He came to me and pointed out that I'd been really disconnected and just wanted to check in because we like touch base every day. It's like, where have you been? Are you okay? Is everything all right? And he pointed out to me that I am moving into a relationship and we have a lot of parallels in our life and our experiences. So we're able to bounce off of each other. I just want to bring to your awareness the potential that being in a relationship might be bringing some things up for you, and you might be burying yourself in work and maybe disconnecting and avoiding because you're processing. So if you want to process, I'm here for you. And when he said that, I was like, that's something to consider that I actually hadn't, is that instead of withdrawing from my partner, because I have a partner who will deep dive but isn't going to let me just wallow in my shit, he'll be like, okay, let's not stay there, but it's okay that you feel what you're feeling. Also, let's find something to laugh at because laughter is healing. And it's a different dynamic. Whereas I would normally like withdraw from my partner and fall into my friends or just be in my own space and not talk to anyone and just go alone. Now it seems like I'm doing it in reverse, where like I am withdrawing into myself, but I'm not cutting everyone off. I'm just giving a little bit more space and I'm opening up here and there as I feel comfortable, because I'm processing to a point that I feel like I can elaborate on it. Because if you haven't already noticed, I'm very verbal. I like to do things thoroughly. I want to be able to clearly articulate. And if I'm not able to clearly articulate, I get frustrated. I don't want to be misunderstood. But if I want to be understood, I need to understand it myself first.
Yeah.
So now I'm showing up for myself as opposed to just withdrawing and assuming that other people are going to mistreat me for even having emotions, because that's not the world I live in anymore. Did I actually answer your question?
No, I think you did. I think that you answered how did you historically respond to those challenges? And in that, you also described how things are happening now, maybe less of that aspect, but it was an either or question, right? Because you're going to give you a chance to either talk about how things happen historically, but since you've been doing work, I expect that your response has changed and you give you some space to talk about how it happens now. And I wanted to bring to awareness this really common misunderstanding that coping mechanisms are like all or nothing, right? This is really easy to feel like this is what I did before. It's not healthy. I'm giving it up. I'm never going to get a chance to do this again. That's a really easy way to feel. And it's not accurate, because there's a healthy balance. Just because you used to drink to the point of blacking out every time you got stressed out doesn't mean that there isn't a space where you could have a healthy relationship with alcohol and have a drink at dinner, right? Having a drink at dinner isn't necessarily problematic. Yeah. And I think with other coping mechanisms, you mentioned withdrawing, but in a more measured way. And I think that's really beautiful, right? Where you may be able to have a relationship with withdrawing that is healthy. You may be able to say, you know what? I need a little extra me time right now, and then be mindful of it and let it be choiceful and let it be something where you're deciding to do that instead of doing it as a compulsion, right?
Yeah, that's very insightful and very true the way you explain it. And I like the analogy that you use, because I actually recognized before I left my marriage that I was definitely using alcohol as the substances as a crutch, and not in excess because we have a child. So that's, for me, that would be irresponsible, but I was still not using it in a healthy way. And when I left, I stopped drinking altogether for a while, doing the all or nothing, thinking I don't need to have it all. And I was like, wait a minute. No, just don't use it as a coping mechanism. So I set rules around it of, okay, if I'm really depressed or I'm having a hard time, that's not going to happen. And the only drinking that needs to happen is if I'm with a trusted support person. We have a limit, which I have a low limit anyway. So that wasn't a big deal. But for me, I felt like I really needed to have structure around it because I was so depressed and having such a hard time. So yeah, I think that's a great way to format it because that's something I actually do have lived experience with, having to moderate on that level. And also with coping mechanisms, like for me, something I realized is that a lot of my coping mechanisms were survival coping skills. And when you look at it from a survival standpoint, that's completely different than using a coping mechanism that may be the same, but you're in a thrive mindset or achieving thrive.
Mm-hmm.
I really had to unlearn that. And I had some friends and a therapist point out that that's not actually unhealthy. Maybe it was when you were using it for survival because of the context of it and you have a negative association with it. But now moving forward, you're not in that place anymore. You're a different person. So how can you utilize this tool that you put in your toolbox to your advantage? Because you still have the tool, but you're in a different place. So just use that tool differently. And I was like, oh, yeah, let me open this toolbox. It makes sense.
Yeah. And we can get attached to tools. Like it can be really challenging, and that can be a barrier to growth and moving forward, to say, I really doing this. I really like playing video games personally. And if I play video games every moment that I get stressed out and never deal with it and never sit in my stress, then that's unhealthy. Even if it's not like I'm not moving and then my muscles are atrophying, right? It's just, is there a negative consequence that outweighs the benefit, right? And I don't have to give up video games. I could say, you know what? Let me do this, where I'm saying, oh, it's 8:00. This is my hour to play video games, right? And so now I have this healthy relationship. And honestly, you can enjoy it more because there isn't guilt or shame associated with it, using it in an unhealthy way. So
Exactly. And I do want to tie it back into the theme of sexuality in this, because one thing that I did was just experimenting with being more free of, okay, I can approach sex differently, because some people are okay with casual sex. Some people aren't. There's some people want to have multiple partners. They're into polyamory, even in a committed relationship. There's all these different dynamics that I never even really looked at. Oh, none of that's for me. And I never even explored any of these things. How do I know that they're not for me? Because there's so much shame attached to any of that I wasn't even going to go there. Plus, I was in committed monogamous relationships with people that were a little bit more conservative with how they approach things. And I'd learned that I actually was pretty on point with about 75% of what I thought my preferences were. But then there's that other 25%. I was like, okay, I've learned some things about myself and what I prefer and why I prefer it. And it's given me a lot of clarity, and it's taken away the shame aspect, because I've met an amazing community of people that are into the BDSM world, people that are into poly relationships, people that are much more strict about what they do and how they do it, or more conservative, or people that fully embrace both aspects of their sexuality. And they're like, I discovered I'm pansexual. Had no idea. I thought I was bisexual all these years, but I'm not. For me, I finally found a label. It's, oh, I actually fit into that, because it's more about personality. It never had anything to do with gender. And I've been with more males than females, but it's like it opened my mind up to all these different concepts that, had I not explored this, I wouldn't have known. But now there's these people that are in their own world and have already explored and are comfortable and are still exploring, like, hey, consider this. And it's like a gift. Oh, I get to open up this gift. What is this? Cool. This is exciting. So it became like exciting for a while. And then I did have some shame around the exploring. And then I realized that the shame wasn't trauma driven, actually. Like, it started out as a trauma trigger. And then it moved into, no, actually, I think I just found something that's not really for me. And it's actually interfering with my ethics as I have developed them in my moral code and what that looks like. So, okay, I found one of those edges. That's cool. That's a good thing, right? So I was able to reformat that from guilt and shame to just like, it's not even guilt or shame related. This is just you found something that doesn't resonate with you. So instead of feeling shame about it or feeling guilty that, explored whatever, just make note of it, right? I'm just like, oh, okay, this is a new thing. I feel a certain way about it. Let's look at it. Let's be curious. Putting on my coaching hat with myself of just explore this with curiosity and let's play with it some and figure out what's going on. And I just discovered, okay, I found one of my edges and that's okay. And that edge may change in the future and that's okay too. Just radical acceptance of myself as I
love
am.
that. Yeah, I love that. And I love like this emphasis on curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Like people say, how do I deal with this anger, this frustration, these feelings we traditionally run away from? And if you can come to it with curiosity, it can maybe have a message for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I recognized for a long time. I was running from all emotions, basically, unless I was like feeling the more positive ones. I think emotions are emotions. I don't think they're good or bad, positive or negative. They're there to teach us something. Like when we feel something in our body, whether it's mental, because in my coaching work, I do mind, body, and spirit. So I follow that myself too. If I'm feeling something and my body's trying to tell me something, if I feel an emotion in my brain's trying to set off some warning bells or teach me something. So to ignore it doesn't make sense. And same spiritually, like if I'm getting spiritual message, there's a reason for that. And I can ignore it if I want to. It's probably not going to go well. And I have to I haven't learned that lesson because I keep getting shown it over and over again. Hey, stop doing this. It's not going to go well. And I'm like, oh yeah, thanks for the reminder. But it's there to teach. And that's been a big mindset shift for me that I feel like I'm finally embracing more. And that curiosity was the key. And I give so much grace to everyone else but myself. I'm so hard on myself. And even my child, sometimes a little more firm with my child. And compared to how I was parented, I am like super lax as a parent. Very different parenting style, but for her, all she's ever known is very loving parents. So when I even get stern for her, it's, whoa, you're yelling at me. It's like, okay, I didn't yell. I was stern. I know you're not used to that. But she even has felt it before of just, mommy, you're being too hard on yourself. Oh, so I'm being a little hard on you because I'm being too hard on myself. And we hold each other accountable. I'm all about that in parenting. Like, girl, hold me accountable. If I'm being too stern, let me know. Doesn't always mean I'm going to change that sternness because sometimes it's needed, but I want that. I want people to tell me some things that I may not be seeing about myself.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Inviting your child to participate in the accountability conversation is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's empowering for her. And it's helpful for me I was just talking to one of my friends about this today, to get out of that mindset that as parents, we're always right and we have to be in control. And what a fallacy. And what are we teaching our kids of just do as I say, not as I do, or just blindly follow instructions and don't have an opinion, don't have feelings? Of course, that's not what we intend to teach them, but it's totally what we're teaching them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need to be snapped out of, okay, not teaching the right lesson, have the best intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So let's stop this right now.
Yeah. Having a critical child is definitely more work, but it is well worth the work because you don't want them being some cog in a machine, right? That's no life to live. Right.
It's a gift. It's a gift. Even when I hear she's having trouble in school, it's okay, there's some work to be done. She's also neurodivergent, so I get the struggle. But sometimes there have been things that come up where it's viewed as defiant. But what's happening when I hear the story from all the sides, all the different people involved, it sounds like she just had an opinion and you didn't like it. And then having to explain to her, you have these teachers that have 30 students in a class, they're trying to manage everyone. So you just got to consider that it's okay that you have that opinion. That's totally fine. They just may not be able to explore that with you in that moment because they have a lot of kids to manage. And you're able to do this level of things, but some of these kids, they're not on that same pace. They need a little bit more attention and time. So your teacher may have higher expectations of you because she knows your potential. So it's just an awareness to have, which that's a lot for a 7-year-old to pick up anyways. A lot of adults don't even have that awareness, but it's a good opportunity to teach and see, like, it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay that you have an opinion. The way that we express it is really important. And that's what we need to have awareness of. And it's challenging to teach because I realize as a child myself, I wasn't taught that. I didn't learn that until I was an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how you end intergenerational trauma. So you do a better job than your parents did. Right.
That's the goal.
Okay, I got one more tough question, and I swear it's the last one, right?
Yeah. Hit me with
So
it.
we talked about this response to the shame experience, right? And we talked about how it happened one way and it's happening a little bit differently now. How would you like it to happen when you have this experience, when you feel this fear, anger, gut punch, sadness, panic attack, headache? How do you want to respond?
It sounds so awful when you say it out loud back to me. Oh my gosh. Like this ball of stress over here. Let's see. Envision what my ideal reaction to those things would be. Is that what you're asking?
Response. We're not talking about a reaction, right? You've got the mindfulness, you've got the pause. So the pause happens, you see it, you feel it, and you're not compelled to respond, or I'm sorry, you're not compelled to react. Instead, you have that moment and you can respond. So how do you want to respond?
That's number one. I like what you did there, that mindset shift of don't react, respond, because that's instrumental. And I think you just made me realize that I may have still been reacting to it unintentionally. So how I would like to respond is what I've described so far, which is what I'm practicing. And I would like to have, I will have, words matter, I will have more compassion with myself when I have those moments. So responding in the same way that I would to my daughter, right? Of coming from a heart center of seeing myself as I am, allowing myself to have space for discipline, right? As well. Okay, I need to be more disciplined in this and it will help me. But compassion and love of that same thing I would do for her, of just like, it's okay. It's okay that you feel this. It's okay that you made a mistake. It's okay that whatever happened, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. Let that out. Let's just do it in healthy ways. So my response that I'm striving towards is a more compassionate, more graceful version of myself that approaches myself with love. I have a really close friend of mine who I love dearly that I pointed out to him that I've noticed that when you're not in abusive environments and situations, you abuse yourself. And then months later, a different friend who I told that story to said, I think you may have also been doing that to yourself a few times in the last year. Yeah, we do give the best advice to others that we can give to ourselves, right? So with that awareness, that's where that piece came from of, okay, I have to be compassionate. I'm being just as hard on myself as happened when I was a child. And then through the relationships, because that trauma cycle, right? We see what's comfortable, but what's comfortable for someone who's been abused is not really something to be comfortable with. It's toxic, it's dysfunctional. So to get out of that mindset of this is normal and find normalization in happiness and joy and safety in all situations, to allow myself to be safe with myself too. Just like, I love you, I'm here for you, it's okay. Bring that in here. I give it to everyone else. I've got to give it to myself too. I've got to fill up my cup.
Yeah. I think too that it can be discouraging to find these things sometimes, but I think it's also evidence that you've been doing the heavy lifting, right? If we drop a glass on the floor, we have to pick up the big pieces, and you can't see the little tiny shards of glass until you pick up the big pieces. You've been doing the heavy lifting. You've been getting these big chunks out of the way. And yeah, okay, there's some fine pieces of broken glass, but that's just part of the process. And that's really evidence that you've been doing the work, right? To find more subtle ways to do the work is a natural progression.
That's a beautiful analogy. I like that. I also pictured, as you were talking about that, those moments where you may miss a piece and it cuts the crap out of your foot too.
Yeah.
Totally had that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how you find it. Yeah. You can inspect, you can look down the road, you might still find a piece, and then you go, oh, there it is.
Well, and that's to tie it back into where we started with relationships as it pertains to sexuality and all of that. One thing I noticed, and I was just having this conversation today too, is like that fear of being in a relationship again and not being ready, but recognizing that a lot of these lessons, like the heavy lifting that I've done and even picking up some of the bigger shards of glass that are smaller, once all that's out of the way, some of it, because the trauma is associated with relationships, I'm not going to be able to clean it up until I'm actually in a relationship, practicing a healthy relationship, redefining those, because I can look at it from the outside all day long and blow at it from a distance, but that's not going to get the glass off the floor and put it in the trash can. That's one where it's going to take, or we'll say, stick with the analogy, if I'm the broom, I can sweep it around all day long, but I may still need the dustpan to sweep it into. So it's like my partner is going to be a part of that dynamic as well. But it's freaking terrifying. It's like the what if monster starts crawling around. What if you miss something? What if this person is this? What if you're ignoring things? What if this becomes codependent? What if all the things that I've done in the past, I'm just like, again, volume knob. Let's turn it down because you're more aware now. And with awareness, you can move forward differently and you're empowered. So you're able to handle these situations and you're not trapped. We're not victim mentality anymore. That's not what we do. If we're in a situation that we don't like, can 100% say, this, for me, the opposite of empowerment is victimhood. I'm not living here anymore. And even if I see that I'm here, it's okay. Let's turn on that empowerment and say, no, this is not where I want to be. I don't have to be here. I don't have to do anything. I always have a choice. Just have to deal with the consequences of those actions. So now let's look at what the consequences are and what am I willing and able to deal with, and then go from there. I'm a planner. That was one of the strengths that came from my childhood abuse survival mode, is I had to hyper plan everything. I had to look at every potential route of every single action of what could happen to me if I do all these things. Survival skill. Now as an adult, I can plan the shit out of anything. I don't usually want to because my brain does that. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, can we just simplify this, please? My brain's like, no, we have to do this.
All the things. Yeah.
All the things.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for showing up authentically and on the cosmic level. I want to really thank you for doing the work like up and until today. Like you've been working at being a better parent, at being a better partner, at being a better person, being a better friend to yourself. And that makes a difference, right? It makes a huge difference. So thank you. And I love the idea of having you come on the show again, and you can coach me on my ADD.
Ooh, yes.
But I don't know if the audience wants it. So you guys got to ask for it. Tell me you want it and we'll do it.
God, I love that.
It's so hard because I know people love the show, and I talk to people who are like, man, I just love that episode. And that's great. But it's what did they say? Hate shouts and love feels. So y'all are out there feeling love and I don't know it. So tell me you love it, because I can't tell. I definitely hear the hate that happens because people shout it. But yeah, if you want me to get coached on my ADD and all these, you get to hear the insides of my various projects. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. So, tell me you want it. I don't know if you want it.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, and before we go, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Yes. So if you go to LMHT, that's like the drink, LMHTEA.org, you'll find my website. You'll find links to my social media. You'll also find a phone number that you can call. Do not text that number unless you're using WhatsApp. And you can get in touch with me through any of those modalities.
Fantastic. Thanks again. And hopefully I'll see you on the show again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Let's schedule it.
Okay. Bye now.
Thanks for watching the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast. Support our show at patreon.com/AskEzra. Join us at the personal growth tier and receive a special thank you on the next podcast episode. A very special thank you to both Sarah Nash and Deb Matson for being Patreon supporters at the personal growth tier and helping make the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast possible.